going to take you on a historical and culinary tour of limu, or edible seaweeds. The Hawaiian word limu refers not only to marine algae, but also to freshwater macroalgae, including mosses, liverworts, and even some soft corals. Edible limu grow mostly on limestone or volcanic rocks, on beaches, shallow reefs, and tide pools. Certain varieties, such as limu ele, grow where the stream meets the ocean, and others, such as limu kohu, grow from tide pools to as deep as 30 feet. For Hawaiians, limu contributed important vitamins such as B12 and minerals such as magnesium, potassium, and iodine to their diet that other staples such as Uwala and kalo did not. The gathering, naming, and cultural knowledge of limu rested primarily on Hawaiian women. It's speculated that because foods like bananas, coconut, and pork or kapu are forbidden for women to consume, they became the experts on limu. Today, I'm going to show you how to gather and prepare limu vavai'iole. Here's a few more you can identify while harvesting. Limu ele is found near brackish water. It appears as dark green tufts on the rocks. Limu palahalaha can be found attached to basalt rock or old coral heads in tide pools. It looks like translucent green lettuce. When harvesting any limu, take care not to remove the plant's holdfasts from the rock because those are like its roots. Instead, gently pinch off the desired leaflets, ensuring that the holdfast remains. Limu vavai'iole has a strong base, so you don't have to worry too much about pulling out its holdfasts. Traditionally, limu was eaten as a condiment with raw fish. Preparation depended on the texture and flavor of the limu. Many were eaten raw, while others had to be pounded to release the a'ala or fragrance. Seasonal limu was heavily salted for preservation. However, most varieties were consumed within a few days of harvest. As recent as 50 years ago, limu could still be commonly found in abundance at markets and grocery stores. Sadly, due to pollution, overharvesting, and water diversion, limu availability is drastically different today. You'll have to look much harder than your grandparents' generation did to find these on beaches, reefs, and tide pools today. You can still find some varieties of limu at special markets, but the most exciting place to find these varieties of Hawaiian limu is the nearest coastline.
Aloha! My name is Stephanie, and I'm going to tell you the history of Uwala, also known as the Hawaiian sweet potato. Uwala is a canoe plant that was brought to the Hawaiian Islands by early Polynesian settlers from its origins in South America. Alongside taro, it was one of the main staples of the Hawaiian diet during pre-colonial times. Because Uwala was so easy to grow, Hawaiians were able to cultivate it in places like the ridges of mountains 5,000 feet in elevation, or on flat ground as low as sea level. Over 230 varieties of sweet potato were cultivated in early Hawaii, but today, only about 40 types remain. Now, when someone refers to the Hawaiian sweet potato, many people think of the bright purple Okinawan sweet potato that was brought over by Japanese immigrants in the 1800s. Because it's the most common potato variety you can buy at stores today, that is the type that I chose to use for this recipe. Before I begin, I just wanted to show you what Uwala can look like planted. You can see how vigorously it grows, and if you're not careful, it can take over the entire garden, so it's best to either plant it in its own container or a really spacious area without other plants nearby. When harvesting Uwala, not only can you pick the potatoes from underneath the soil, but you can actually pick the leaves and use them as a substitute for greens like spinach. So salads, smoothies, soups, or any recipe that allows you to boil, bake, and even steam them are perfect for Uwala leaves. In ancient Hawaii, Uwala was considered to have medicinal properties, and depending on the variety, it could be used as a laxative to induce lactation in pregnant women, cure asthma, and more. Today we're going to be making a personal recipe that I call Uwala Sunrise. First, it's important to note that most of the nutritional value of the sweet potato is near the skin, so to retain it, it's best to either steam or bake it rather than boil it with water. Otherwise, all the vitamins and minerals will seep out into the water. To start, preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Then, wash your potatoes with warm water to get any remaining dirt off. Poke some holes into the potato with a fork, being really careful not to stab yourself, like I almost did. This is so that way you can release any trapped steam that arises during the baking process, so your potatoes don't explode in the oven. Season it with olive oil, salt, and pepper, or you can use this really good Hawaiian seasoning that I bought at the grocery store. And then place it on a baking pan covered in foil. Bake it in the oven for about 40 to 50 minutes depending on how big your potato is. You can tell the potato is done when you're able to poke it through the center with a fork. After letting it cool for about 15 minutes, slice them up and add some Kahlua pork, either homemade or prepackaged from your local grocery store, and top it off with a sunny side egg. And that's it! A super simple breakfast-style meal that's as delicious as it is filling.
Hi, I'm Sophie. Today I will be talking about some history of kalo and showing you a little recipe to make some yummy poi mochi. This is what a kalo looks like in a lo'i or wetland taro patch. Typically, lo'i kalo are fed from a freshwater source like an upland stream or spring. In this case, some water that comes down from this kahavai or stream reaches the manovai, which is the rock structure that slows the water to help channel it. Some water then enters the auwai that transports the water from the stream to the lo'i. Water is then able to flow into the makavai, which are the openings in the lo'i where water can enter and exit. In ancient Hawaii, kalo was a high-prized food staple and also used in medicine and in some rituals. Hawaiians trace their lineage back to the very first kalo. It is said that Wakea, Sky Father, and Ho'ohoku Kalani, the goddess of the stars, fell in love and had their first child. However, he was stillborn. They buried him on the side of their home, and Ho'ohoku cried over him. Soon after, a plant began to grow. Yes, you guessed it, it was a kalo plant. However, this kalo plant was named Haloa Nakalau Kapalili after its long stem whose leaves quiver in the wind. Wakea and Ho'ohoku then had a second son, healthy and strong. He was named Haloa in honor of his brother who he ate kalo from. Haloa was the first Kanaka or Hawaiian person. He connects all Hawaiians not only to each other but to the Aina. Now let's get cooking. For today's recipe, you need poi, which is traditionally prepared using a wooden board and a stone to pound the cooked kalo to a paste. It then becomes poi as you add water. For this recipe, you will need about 2 cups machiko flour, 3/4 cups sugar, half a bag of poi, 1 cup of water, and oil for frying. I used vegetable oil. First, you will need to pour a good amount of oil into a pot, and while it is heating up, you will need to combine the poi, machiko flour, sugar, and water into a bowl. You can also add more machiko flour depending on the consistency you like. After it is well mixed, you can use a melon ball scooper, or if you're like me and don't have one, 2 same-size spoons will work. With the 2 spoons, you want to try your best to create a round shape, then drop it into the oil to fry. Because they can stick together and fry pretty fast, you need to keep an eye on them. When they are golden brown, transfer to a plate with paper towels to drain the excess oil. Let cool for a few minutes and enjoy!
My name is Shira and I'll be making Ulu Brownies. First, we boil the ulu, so fill the pot with water about halfway and place about 142 grams or 5 ounces of ulu inside the pot. So, a little background about ulu or breadfruit is that it is a staple food crop to the Hawaiians. It came from Papua New Guinea and was brought to the Hawaiian Islands by Polynesian voyagers as a canoe plant. There are a lot of stories about the origin of ulu, and one of them is about the legend of Ku.
the Hawaiian god of farming and fishing. He planted himself into an ulu tree to save his family from starvation. Many parts of the ulu are very beneficial. The bark and wood is used to build canoes, houses, clothing, and drums. The leaves were used as medicine for asthma, ear, and skin infection. Traditionally, ulu is cooked in earth ovens, imu, or over hot coal and can be prepared as poi. Now, when the breadfruit is soft enough, you can turn off the stove and keep about 1/4 of the water. Then you can start mashing the ulu with a fork or whatever you have. You just want to keep mashing the ulu until it has less clumps. On medium heat, melt about 1/2 cup of unsalted butter. When it is completely melted, place it in a bowl, set it aside, and let it cool. As the butter is cooling down, you want to preheat the oven to 350 degrees. To the butter, add 3/4 cups of sugar and 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Mix it, then add 2 eggs, mix again, and then add the mashed ulu and continue mixing. In another bowl, add 3/4 cup of flour, 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, then add your dry ingredients to your wet ingredients instead of what I did here. Okay, now everything seems mixed in together. You can add as much chocolate chips as you'd like. Put this aside for a bit and butter up the pan. Now put the batter in the pan, put it in the oven and bake for 25 minutes.